Welcome to New Hampshire Energy Week 2022.
It's so fun to be here during my favorite week of the year, Energy Week.
We are excited to explore accelerating our energy transition with you through a great lineup of events.
This conference comes at an important moment.
71% of people living in New Hampshire would say yes, global warming is real.
Winter tourism is vital to the economic health of many of the more rural regions of New Hampshire.
New Hampshire's energy future is important to the Small Business Development Center because the more efficient small business can use energy, the more profitable they will become.
I love Energy Week because it's a great opportunity for people from all sectors to come together and learn about clean energy opportunities in New Hampshire.
The businesses, municipalities, and individuals represented here today are leading efforts to promote clean energy and move New Hampshire forward.
Together,
Together, we are all a part of New Hampshire's energy future.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for, as part of New Hampshire Energy Week, for our discussion on opportunities in clean energy financing. This afternoon, you'll be hearing from a great lineup of New Hampshire businesses as they share insights on planning for and implementing their energy efficiency and renewable energy projects that deliver a great return on investment. You'll hear about the value from an economic, energy, and environmental perspective of investing in energy efficiency and renewable energy technologies, as well as a variety of financial and technical resources that are available in New Hampshire for you to successfully undertake these initiatives. We are recording today's session and we'll be sharing the link with attendees in the coming days. We ask that if you have questions for today's speakers to please post them in the Q&A box. We will be monitoring that throughout the event and have reserved time to answer your questions during the panelist discussion portion of our program. New Hampshire Energy Week is made possible by our sponsors. Many thanks to our premier sponsors, New Hampshire Saves, Coca-Cola Beverages of New England, and Eversource, and a special thanks to today's event sponsors, Rath, Young, and Pignatelli. We are excited for our speakers to share their insights and experiences with you on this important topic. So first up, we'll hear from Jennifer Legere. She's the owner of A Place to Grow in Brentwood, and she's going to kick things off for us today and tell us about her energy story. Jennifer.
Hi, how are you? Sorry, I didn't want to unmute. My name is Jennifer Legere, and I own A Place to Grow here in Brentwood. We have 13 acres, and when we moved into our business about 5-6 years ago at this point, we realized, controlling our budget was one of the things we needed to be successful in this location. So kind of backed into solar to help us with that. So go ahead, Melissa. So this is great news this week. We were the New Hampshire Woman-Owned Small Business of the Year this year. And I think part of that selection has a lot to do with our use of funding through the CDFA and that sustainability mission that we have chosen to follow through on. So we're really proud of, our being here for New Hampshire Energy Week and the work that we've done for using solar energy and sustainable business practices here. So a lot to be thankful for. So in 2016, we purchased this 3,700 square foot building. And it was a lot to manage at the time. Our budget was very variable. And there was a lot of challenges to controlling our budget that we really needed to manage. So we had a $1,200 propane bill in February of 2017, which really stunned us, those who have to pay your bills. He was like, what do we do with this? So we realized we really wanted something that was more controlled over time, that we could budget and was known to us. So we started researching some solar energy solutions. energy independence. Let's go. So we recognized that even though our building was fairly new, it was energy inefficient. Our teachers had, you know, when they were sitting on the floor with the kids, they noticed that the floors were cold, and they could feel kind of the cold air leaking in. We had upstairs that was really hot, downstairs it was really cold. So we started our project with a level 2 energy audit with Margaret Dillon at Seeds that came to us via the CDFA grant for the audit. So we paid $500 for that upfront. So out of our audit, which was this really thick amount of information that comes to you, we sat down and started to create a plan, very quick plan. And that, so Scott, my builder, some of our team came together to figure out how to work through all of this. So we identified the contractors that we needed. In order to go to a solar project, we had to replace our roof. To start through into a full metal roof. We fully insulated the building. We added air source heat pumps and then our solar array. So this is the insulation. Super fun, a little bit messy, but it's been amazing. The temperature control of our building is so much better than it ever was. It's very constant all the time. Like everyone's much more comfortable, no drafts anymore. So it's been much nicer for the kids and for us. So this is our metal roof going on. I really love having our green metal roof. It speaks to our nature-based experience, makes us feel a little woodsy. And the kids loved participating in kind of watching these solar panels going up and down. Vision energy was great with the kids, really helping them engage in the project. So in order to complete this project, we needed about $93,000, and part of that was for the roof. So it was actually a good portion of the project fee. CDFA funded us with a 4% loan over 10 years, which averages $767 per month. Again, part of that was the roof. So when I look at our loan total, I'm like, well, was it really worth it to have the amount of money that we spent, on solar panels? And then I have to remember that a large part of that is, was actually roof funding that we wouldn't have been able to afford cash out of pocket. So I think our energy independence is half of this and the other half is our roof. So it's a very manageable project for us. We received a lot of grants and rebates. We received money from Eversource. We received REAP grants, 2 different REAP grants. We received refunds from the Public Utility Commission, energy tax credits. So over $42,000 of our project was actually funded in grants and rebates, which is phenomenal. Oh, that's a hard slide to read. Sorry, I didn't realize that color was going to be so hard. So I'm trying to see it myself. So in 2016, we were spending about $547 a month in utilities. Our utility costs have gone down much more. Our average propane costs, we do a budget, so it's $85 a month. We know what that is, where before it was highly variable. And our energy costs, we had a lot of sun last summer. Unfortunately, it was kind of a rainy year for us, so we didn't see as much savings on the electric portion as we did before. But our electricity use has been way down compared to what it was before as well. So really nice low numbers that help us keep our budget in check. So the takeaways really in completing this project, which I would do again a million times over, is that it increased comfort across our building tremendously. Our floors are warmer. It's consistently the same temperature everywhere. It's just created a much more comfortable environment. You're not setting the thermostat low at night and then coming back up to temperature during the day. So I think everyone in the building has been happier with it, and every classroom is exactly the same temperature. Making sure you size your system correctly up front is essential. We decided to not put an air source heat pump in our lobby when we first designed our system. I wish we had, because we installed one 2 years later because it was too cold. And so it's added to our energy usage. And when we, in retrospect, wanted to add more panels, we realized that they're just not affordable for us to add right now in terms of cash access. So we paid for the air source heat pump, but we can't add more panels right now. So we wish we had. So I think if you're going to do a project and you're like, well, maybe I should do this, but not yet, do it while you have the grants in front of you. It's much easier. So where does that leave us? You know, we can make a whole lot of coffee every year. There's a lot of macaroni and cheese that you can have in our solar energy. We have 44 solar panels. So it's a lot of energy that we produce inside of our company, and it's really been, you know, an amazing experience to have this. And I love having this picture hanging in our front hallway to really remind people how much energy we're saving every year. So it's pretty cool. Yeah, our kids definitely participated, you know, in all of the projects across the school, and it was fun to have revision here on a regular basis, you know, sharing with the kids and giving them these experiences. So you can see our new solar panels on the back. So we did do our Energy Star rating. We can't certify because of the type of building that we are, but we have looked at all of our data in one of the management software programs, and we do have an Energy Star rating of 94 now. I think that's personally that's fantastic. We're really proud of that number.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jen. And actually, we have 2 questions coming up about your project specifically. Could you go into what a REAP grant is?
Rural energy. What's the
acronym aside? It was USDA,
okay,
right? That you worked with.
Yes. I was like,
what is? Talk a little bit about what that process was like for you.
Sure. So it's funny because when we looked at our project, Scott Mislansky from the CDFA was like, well, you could qualify for a REAP grant, but you have 2 days to get your application in, and that's impossible. And we did it. We made it happen. So it's funding that comes from, like, you know, it's the USDA Rural Energy. It was a great resource. There's 2 categories, one for energy efficiency and one for the solar conversion that we did. So there were 2 different categories that we qualified for. And it's a lot of paperwork. The information out of our energy audit was required to complete that. So Margaret Dillon from Seeds and Amy from Revision Energy worked with us really closely to complete those applications and get all the data we needed, because it was a lot of information, numbers, and math involved that I knew nothing about. So, but worthwhile if you have the right project team in doing this. The money is fantastic, and you just need to have people helping you along the way.
Absolutely, pulled it off.
We did.
And can you talk about, there's a question here as to whether your site's total load is covered on site by your solar, or if it's just a percentage, if you know that answer.
Yeah, so we do. So we were pretty close to net zero when we installed our original system. We added another air source heat pump in October of this year because we realized it was just it was still too chilly in our foyer. We weren't getting enough heat from the other classroom spaces. And when we added this particular heat pump, it actually, we're not producing as much energy as we need to. We do have a few more panels that we could put on the building. We've talked to Revision about installing them, but for the cost of the panels versus what we're paying, it doesn't really make sense for us to do that right now. that's why I was kind of talking about making sure that you look at everything you think your system's going to need up front, because it's easier to do it all at once rather than in pieces afterwards if you need to add back. So we wish that we had it done before, and we didn't, and I would like them now. But solar panels cost a lot more now than they did when we did our project too.
That wrapped it up for questions, and I think that might be the end of your slides. So thanks, Jen. We'll have you come back during the discussion portion, and appreciate you sharing your insight, and also love hearing the pitter patter of the next generation of nature loving environmentalists in the background. So next up, we have Lydia West. She's the Chief Financial Officer for Goosebay Lumber, Goosebay Sawmill and Lumber, I'll correct myself, in Chichester. So Lydia, I'll turn it over to you to share your story.
Good afternoon. Before I start into our story, I'd like to give you a little background on who we are. It always seems like you need to be a big company to make big changes. We are anything but a big company, but with help have achieved some big changes. In 1978, Carl Malstead bought the pieces of a sawmill lying rusting in a field and brought them to Chichester in several trips with his pickup truck. He put all the pieces together, carved a sign, and Goosebay Sawmill and Lumber was born. I joined the company after the birth of our first child in 1993. Together, Carl and I built the business to offer not only rough sawn lumber, but hardwood and exotics sourced both locally and from around the world. We currently stock over 70 species of hardwood and softwood. Although we divorced in 2002, we have continued to work together. As recently as 2018, we had 3 employees, Carl, me, and my stepson, Carl. We currently employ 9 people. My role in the company has always been to do the quote unquote financial stuff. Carl Sr. is the machinery guy and oversees all the activity in the sawmill and yard. Carl Jr. is our buyer and heads our sales desk. So as you see, our beginnings are humble and we are not a big company. As with most things today, my story starts with the pandemic. In March of 2020, as the state was shutting down, we had no idea what to expect. Fearing the worst, I reached out to renew my relationship with the New Hampshire SBDC. I braced myself for full economic disaster. Instead, the lockdowns inspired homebound folks to try their hand at new projects, many involving wood. Discussions with my SBDC advisor turned from damage control to capital investment in the business to well position us for future downturns. That is, in case we experienced a post-pandemic slump. One of the many things we did was to schedule a level 2 energy audit of our retail barn. Andrea O'Brien of the SBDC brought in Chase Penoyer of Resilient Buildings to do the actual audit, and Lawrence from Energy LB Resources as a consultant during the audit. Level 2 audits give suggested energy improvements as well as implementation costs and expected savings. Although this only applied to our retail barn, we toured our sawmill and what we call the Pine Barn, which houses our production planer, eye-dry kiln, and cabinet shop. With SBDC guidance, I applied for a CDFA grant to offset 75% of the audit cost. Goosebay paid $968 for the audit. It was during this tour that we brought up the pie in the sky idea of, gee, do you think we could ever be a solar powered sawmill? With much help from Energy LB as well as from the SBDC, we moved forward with selecting the projects from the audit to tackle first, and also with getting installation proposals from 3 different solar companies. As you can imagine, all of these plans take financing. In the late 70s, Goosebay's bank was a local commercial bank. We stayed with the same bank, which has been bought out twice and is now a large international commercial bank. I applied to increase our line of credit. Business was good. We had been with this bank for 40 years, and I was pretty optimistic. I finally got through to my current loan officer, who is located across the state. He had never met me, nor did he have any interest in touring Goosebay. It took a few weeks, but my increased line of credit was quote unquote approved. Then we started with the underwriters. The underwriters were in New Jersey, and because of the size of our business, my loan was assigned to the most junior of the staff. or that's the excuse I was given for what ensued. That's where we entered the rabbit hole. After 4 months, I gave up. With guidance from the SBDC advisor Hollis McGuire, I reached out to Sugar River Bank. They're a small New Hampshire commercial bank with the flexibility and willingness to meet the needs of a small business like Goosebay. My experience was totally different. My loan officer was eager to meet me and to tour Goosebay. We explored every nook and cranny. We talked about every aspect of the business. I shared both our past achievements and our current projections and goals. I didn't realize it at the time, but I had just met with not only my loan officer, but one of the underwriters. In 2 weeks, we signed the papers for a very generous line of credit. When you're a small business looking for financing, it's really important to understand the difference between a local commercial bank and a national or international commercial bank. Larger banks do not portfolio their loans, they pass them through. So what does that mean? You've probably all heard of mortgage-backed securities. So where do all those mortgages come from? The larger banks sell their loans to back these securities. And this type of security can be a portfolio of commercial debt, car loans, or even credit card debt. In order to pass through the loans, each loan has to fit a set of criteria, hence the quote-unquote underwriting problem from the small business point of view. Some smaller banks actually portfolio their loans. In other words, the loan they write for you will stay at that bank and be serviced until maturity at that bank. This gives them flexibility to use logic and common sense. They are not shaping the loan to get the best price in a secondary market. Back to our story. Our first energy improvement involved lighting. Lights to LEDs, several new LED lights in dimly lit areas. Although we received no cash incentives for the new lights, we did receive incentives for old fixtures that were retrofit. The fixtures that you see in the photo lighting our retail barn are only 70 watts each. The fixtures we replaced were 324 watts each. The total cost of the lighting was $9,800, less $3,700 of incentives from Unitil for a net of $6,200. If we had only replaced existing fixtures, the reimbursement rate would have been about 50%. In the Sawmill, we purchased a used electric motor and installed it ourselves, converting our power from diesel to electricity. We are now a solar-powered sawmill. No rebates here, as the motor was used and the labor was ours, but our sawmill is now quieter, faster, cleaner, and less expensive. The jewel in our crown of energy improvements was the installation of the 2 solar arrays. After reviewing the 3 proposals we got, we elected to go with Revision Energy. The audit information was key as it analyzed not only our current electrical needs, but estimated our future needs. With information from the SBDC, we decided to apply for a USDA REAP grant. These grants can award up to 25% of your renewable energy project cost. Being a federal program, you can imagine that the application is lengthy and not the easiest to complete. There are several things to know about applying for a REAP grant. First of all, in order to apply, your business must be located in one of the federally defined rural zones, which luckily applies to a large portion of New Hampshire. Any monies you pay out prior to the submission and approval of your application, such as a deposit or down payment, are not eligible for the REAP grant. You'll need to acquire a DUNS number. Obtaining one is free of charge, but it might take a few days. You must also register at the sam.gov website. You need your DUNS number first. The registration is free at sam.gov, but it may take up to 2 weeks. Beware of very official looking emails and postcards that will offer to complete or renew your registration for you in exchange for a few $100s. You must prove that you have the financing in place to complete the project. If you're going to finance the cost, you need a letter of commitment from your bank guaranteeing a loan of X amount at Y rate. I had to obtain that letter in March for a loan that closed at the end of September. The grants are awarded on a point-based system. In our case, I think it was helpful that our array is sized to meet not only our current needs, but our future needs. One of the reasons we chose Revision Energy is that they are committed to helping clients through the REAP application process. In lieu of a deposit on the project, they charged a very reasonable flat fee to prepare the documents. They completed all of the technical data and guided me through the entire process. They put the pieces of the report together and did the submission to the USDA. We did receive a REAP grant for the full 25% of our project. With Revision's help, we also applied for and received New Hampshire rebates totaling just over $13,000. With tax credits, grants, and depreciation, in tandem with expected offset energy costs and favorable loan terms, our project is projected to be net positive after year one. On November 19th, 2021, our two 33 kilowatt solar panel arrays went live. Together, they produced 78 kilowatts of DC or 66 kilowatts of AC power. And yes, they went live just as our winter energy use increased, the days shortened, and snow and ice covered our panels. But now the days are lengthening, and on our last bill, I finally got to see the beginning of the payback. A bill that fluctuates between $600 and $1,000 per month was $33.23. And yes, because of the large motors we are running and the associated demand charges, the only constant in the amount of our electric bill is large. Last December, I got a call from the USDA asking if I'd be willing to host a tour of Goosebay. The Undersecretary for Rural Development, Xochitl Torres-Small, was coming to visit New Hampshire. The newspapers and television covered her visit to Franklin. What they didn't cover is that in the afternoon, she put on her boots and visited Goosebay. What an honor. It took a village to complete our energy projects. I think you have heard me mention the New Hampshire SPDC a few times today. I can't thank them enough for all their help and inspiration. If you don't already have an SPDC advisor, get one. You won't be sorry. As for the future, we aren't done yet. At the end of August 2022, Revision will be back to install heat pumps in our office area. Step by step, we are working to reduce our carbon footprint, and at the same time, we are making good business sense.
Thank you so much, Lydia, and thank you for including some really important and practical tips for other businesses thinking through how they're going to plan for and implement their own energy goals. I don't see any specific questions for your project right at this moment, so we're going to move on to our next panelist, and then we'll circle back with you during our discussion portion. Great. I'd like to bring on Zach Luse. He's the founder and CEO of Paragon Digital Marketing in Keene to share his energy story.
Thanks, Melissa. I'm Zach Luse. I founded Paragon Digital Marketing in Keene about a decade ago right now. We just celebrated our 10-year anniversary. And we're a digital marketing agency that helps businesses all over the country find and attract customers online. So helping them build websites and use Facebook and Google ads and do search engine optimization. As we grew, one of our biggest challenges was finding bigger office space that suited us, that had reliable internet. The internet piece was a huge challenge. We found places that looked like they would work, and we would get quotes from Fairpoint or other internet service providers, and the cost just didn't make sense. We found one office space on the south side of Keene that was $28,000 to get fiber to it, and the only thing available there was like a 10 meg DSL line, which you can't really run an internet company from. So I was getting frustrated and trying to find a good office space that we could make our home and continue to grow. Then in 2018, I purchased a church. It was an 11,000 square foot church built in 1869. The church is in the heart of downtown Keene. It's on the National Historic Register, and it was on the New Hampshire Preservation Alliance's 7 to Save list because it had sat vacant for 10 years. One of the biggest challenges was heating the building. The wind was literally blowing through the building. It was extremely drafty inside and had a huge boiler that burnt several gallons of oil per hour trying to heat the space. So our biggest challenge and goal was to fix that heating issue. And I'm pretty there was our biggest barrier to making it kind of a financially viable space that made sense for us. I'm pretty sure most people thought I was crazy, but I dove in and started researching and getting to know the building. Next slide. And I quickly realized that I needed help. There were so many confusing programs and incentives out there. It was hard to tell what I qualified for. Sometimes it was hard to get people to call you back to even learn more. And that's when I met Scott Maslansky from CDFA. He pointed me in the right direction, had a ton of great advice, even beyond the financing part of it. It was an invaluable resource as I went through this process. And he got us set up with an energy audit to start, which really helped us make business sense of what we should do, weighing the cost versus the potential savings. And I think that initial audit we had, I think it was we were running around the building, patching up holes, trying to just get a reading on the blower door. It was so bad. Next slide. So the building needed a new roof, and so we started with that and solar. CDFA was able to get us a low interest federal loan for the solar panels that also allowed us to put the roof into that. So we installed 105 solar panels, a 33.6 kilowatt peak system on our roof. But this alone wasn't going to solve our problems because we had a big, huge oil boiler that used a lot of oil, and the wind was still blowing through the building. So next slide. So then we did insulation. We had over 500 bags of cellulose insulation that we blew into the floors and ceiling. Friends and family, employees, and even some clients helped us do it. It was a long weekend of blowing a lot of dusty, messy insulation, but it was fun and made a huge difference. And then we moved on to this. This is one of the things that the energy audit didn't really seem to financially make sense. It was replacing the windows, but you can see the window on the right there. They were closed up with yellowed plexiglass on both sides. They were the original windows. They were kind of beyond repair, and when the wind blew, you could hear the plexiglass rattling on both sides, and the wind just coming right through the windows. So we replaced those, which made a huge difference in the space. You can see some of the windows behind me back here, and just made it much more comfortable and pleasant place, and stopped a lot of those drafts. And even with those windows and all that insulation, we still had a lot of drafts, and you can put all the insulation you want into a building, and if the wind is still blowing through it, it's just going to carry the heat out of the building and not really help you. So we set out to air seal. We did a lot of fixing holes in brick walls and spray foaming areas that were like obvious leaks. And then we called Zone 6 Energy over in Vermont, who was doing a newer process called aero barrier to fix leaks in old buildings. They showed up and they used a fog machine and a blower door and went around and found all the other big leaks. And then the aero barrier product is computer-controlled snow guns. They look like little mini snow guns that blow like a latex caulk into the air. And they pressurize the space with a blower door. So when the airborne caulk is kind of floating around, it finds a hole and it speeds up and it sticks to the sides, and just over a matter of a couple hours fills all the tiny little holes that you would never find. So it was a pretty amazing process to watch and made a huge difference. It was perfect for this big old building with all kinds of cracks and crevices and things you never would have found. And the next slide shows the results of that. So I think our first energy audit showed about 30 air changes per hour when we were running around duct taping holes in the wall. When aero barrier finished, they're like mechanical going around spray foaming and filling in the big holes, the obvious ones. We were down to about 8 air changes per hour. And then they started the aero barrier process. And by the time they finished that, our leakage in the space from the start of that had been reduced by 87% to 1 air change per hour, which is down around, I think, like passive house standards. Pretty amazing. And then we had the space sealed up and insulated. It was already way more comfortable, but we were still doing renovations. And we installed air source heat pumps. For those, we were able to get Eversource rebates, and we found high efficiency heat pumps that will pull heat out of the outside air down to -30 degrees. So these are our primary heating and cooling source. Heats us all the way through the winter in this big space with big brick walls that are very well sealed but not insulated. And it's saving us thousands and thousands of gallons of heating oil every year. And those are powered by the solar array on the roof. Next slide. This is just a couple pictures of the inside. You can see the 2 heat pumps on the right there that heat the main space. My kids and family and I built these Lego line set covers that go down over top of the line sets on the wall. 6,000 Legos went into those. So lots of fun things we did here. Next slide. So the results, we ended up, in our previous office, we were spending about $3,000 a month for rent and insurance, and utilities were included. When I was searching around for larger office spaces that were better suited for us, we were looking at $5,000 or more per month. And then we still had to build out or fit up the spaces because none of them were really ready for us. And then get fiber to the building so we could have reliable internet. In the end, with this space, we're using about 5,000 square feet in the downstairs area. We have not finished the upstairs, the big, large sanctuary yet. But our loans and expenses are around $4,000 a month now. So less than we would have spent on renting a larger office. We kind of shifted all that money we're paying in rent into building equity in a building and paying for solar panels that will produce free power for us in the future. And then as far as the solar and electricity goes, since October 2019, we've produced 97 megawatts of power, and we've used 85 megawatts. It looks like I have a typo here. There should be 12 megawatts that went back into the grid. The total produced power is about what it would take to power 10 average American homes for an entire year in the 2.5 years we've had the solar panels on the roof. And we don't, most of the year we build up credits for our solar from the solar through the net metering. We produce more power than we need, but we do have a small electrical bill because we pay demand charges in the winter that add up. So in the end, we ended up with a building, a historic building that was probably in danger of being torn down. Now it's a financially viable building that makes a lot of sense. We have a whole 6,000 square feet upstairs that we can grow into or do something else with. And it's not only energy efficient, it's super comfortable. There could be a blizzard or a storm going on outside and we wouldn't even know. It's so quiet in here, almost too quiet. We can't even hear the fire station across the street anymore. So it's really made the space very energy efficient and very comfortable. It's turned out great.
Thanks so much, Zach. We've got a couple questions specific to your project. So if you don't mind, I'm gonna ask a few. And I'll answer the first one. What does CDFA stand for and who are they and where are they located? So CDFA is the Community Development Finance Authority, and we are a statewide entity that deploys state, federal, and private resources to support community development, economic development, and clean energy initiatives like the ones you're hearing about today across the state. So we're located right here in New Hampshire, and we support New Hampshire small businesses and businesses of any size, nonprofits and municipalities. But we have a couple of people are interested to hear about your building being on the National Register of Historic Places and whether that presented challenges in terms of getting funding or approval and weatherizing it.
I think the only challenge it really presented was people's misunderstanding of it made it hard for us to get insurance during the construction phase. Nobody wanted to insure a construction loan for it. But it's kind of a misconception that that restricts you. Really, it's just on a list. The only restrictions you get with the historic register is if you take tax credits and you do a restoration to the standards that they require, then you have restrictions on the building for, I believe, 5 years, or you have to pay back the tax credits. But there's no restrictions on the building. The only restrictions we really had were on the exterior with the Keene's Historic District Commission, and they were super flexible and let us put the solar panels on the roof, and they've been great to work with.
Excellent. We have a couple of questions surrounding your heat pumps and your heat generation. So if you know, what was the percentage of the Eversource grant for the heat pumps? I'm not sure if you have that technical info on hand.
I don't remember off the top of my head. It wasn't a percentage, it was based on the tonnage of the heat pumps. I believe we got somewhere in the ballpark of $5,000 or $6,000 back for the heat pumps.
Great. And people are curious if they work in that large volume space like a church. How's that working?
They work great. It's super comfortable in here. We oversized them a little bit and we didn't really need to. This space I'm in is 11-foot tin ceilings, and there's 2 heat pumps, one like behind me and one on the other end of the wall, and it heats the whole space. And I think it's close to 3,000 square foot open space.
Awesome. And is that any other sources of heat beside electric is another question that popped up. Nope.
We have a big old boiler sitting back there that we could use to heat the upstairs still, but the space we occupy is completely electric.
Great. And there's a follow-up question about being on the historic register. It sounds like it wasn't as complicated as one might think to be able to facilitate your improvements with that designation, but were there any requirements about retaining the outside look, particularly when it came to the windows, which look far better than the ones that you inherited when you purchased the building?
Yeah, so that fell under the Historic District Commission. So I had to go take samples of the windows in and make the case, and they were, because we were improving a building that was likely to get demolished, and they understood what we were trying to do. They were very flexible. They had some requirements they put on us to make sure we were doing things they wanted, but it wasn't bad at all.
Excellent. So I think that wraps it up as far as projects specific to your project, questions rather specific to your project. So we're going to shift into the panel discussion. So I'll ask you to stick with me for a minute and we'll bring back your other panelists. And also mention, there was a question about what does SBDC stand for. Lydia referenced that several times during her portion of the discussion, and it is the New Hampshire Small Business Development Center, and they are located on the Seacoast, but are a statewide resource for organizations, for businesses looking for support. And we can dive into that a little bit further. Lydia, maybe you can share a little bit more as we jump into some of the questions we have for our panel. And I'm going to stop sharing so we can see all of you. And turn it over to Katie, who's going to facilitate the discussion portion of our event.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you all. That was so great. It was really practical, informative, and super inspiring. So it's nice to be here with all of you. I'd love to hear, and maybe Lydia, you could start because you did talk about kind of anticipating needing SBDC. But what resources did you anticipate needing, each of you? And then which challenges were unexpected and you needed resources to help you with those challenges, but they were unexpected, and you'd recommend other businesses really thinking through and planning for those challenges as they think to move forward?
I think, you know, like I said, I was really panicking. I wasn't sure if we were going to be forced to shut down. And in March of 2020, there were no PPP loans. There was nothing out there yet. And all I could just think is, oh my gosh, how are we going to survive if we can't be open? And so it was more of a knee-jerk panic reaction, reaching out for financial help. And it was kind of funny because I didn't realize the depth of what the SBDC could offer. And they really have their finger on every single opportunity that's out there. And my primary advisor, Hollis McGuire, has been just really super excellent about suggesting things that she thought might be good for my business. And a lot of them, as you can see, I followed up on. And I think I'm definitely surprised that we ended up with solar panels and extraordinarily pleased. You know, that was our biggest project, but really got a lot of help with financing a lot of different projects. We've really increased our business. So they've been great.
It's so great to hear about those long-term partnerships that you relied on in this extraordinary time, and then those new partnerships like the local bank. Jen, do you have things that you expected and things that were surprising challenges? And then we'll go to Zach.
So two of the things that Lydia talked about really resonated with me, which is a local funding source. We use Service Credit Union. We had previously had some of the larger banks when we first started, and I feel like the credit unions and smaller local banks are much more agile in being able to serve your needs. So if you don't have a really good banking relationship with a small local bank, you know, definitely I would reach out and establish those relationships. I think they're really important, especially if you need to build resiliency for your business, because they get to know who you are personally. I mean, I got a card from my banker when I had surgery, which is like, you know, fantastic. So the other thing is making sure you're networking with your SBDC. I use RADC here in Raymond. They're really just such an incredible wealth of information that help you get through these challenges that you didn't know that you would have, and you have questions. I mean, they help me with marketing, like financing. They help finance my building. They help me design my website. They do videos for me. I mean, like they've helped with so many things. It's incredible. So I think they're tremendous resources to have as well. And, you know, plan for the unexpected. We, you know, when we were getting into this project, we didn't really think about how to fund the roof. We're like, yeah, let's do solar, but we needed a new roof first. So how do you fund a roof in the middle of this project that you weren't anticipating, or windows, Zach, right? So you know, they were creative. Everyone worked with us in making this happen, which was fantastic. But know that when you get into large scale projects, it's a lot of project management. They're fairly time intensive. I managed the entire project. It took me 10 months. I was exhausted when we were done, but absolutely worthwhile. And yeah, there's going to be a hiccup. So you got to have a plan to figure out how to get through them.
You want me to answer the same question?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. I would definitely echo the SBDC is a great resource, completely free, and they can give you advice on all kinds of things just besides the energy efficiency piece. The relationship with my local bank was huge. That was kind of I didn't end up financing most of it through them because I met Scott. Scott was, when I got to the point where I met Scott from CDFA, I was in a whirlwind of programs and stuff, trying to figure it all out and trying to figure out what I was going to do. And he really gave me the guidance I needed to figure out what I was going to do and how I was going to do it and how I was going to finance it. So that was, Scott was a lifesaver in the process and really helped me navigate stuff and put me in touch with the right people.
Amazing. If you were to do it again, let's say Jennifer, would you do the project again, and what would you do differently, if anything?
Totally, I'd do it all over again. Like I said in our conversation, I would make sure that we had really looked at every possible need that we had versus what we thought we needed at the time, because adding that extra air source heat pump, a few years later, made our solar system undersized for what we really needed. So I wish that we had just kind of done it all up front and made sure that there was no questions unanswered, because it would have been easier to fund up front. But we would absolutely, do it all over again. I love talking about my solar system. Because we're on 125, people just stop in and they're like, you have solar, let's talk about your solar. I'm like, okay, let's do this. So I mean, like total strangers come in. It's awesome though, but I love it. And I feel like because, we are a childcare center and we're, nature-based, we're really spending a lot of time talking about how to build a sustainable future, with our kids, and they see what we're doing every single day. And it does make a difference, from day one.
That's great. Jen talked about some amazing benefits beyond cost savings, include, marketing her business as a nature-based program, and then also the engagement with future generations in this work.
Yeah.
Are there other benefits, Zach and Lydia, that you saw beyond cost savings? I really was struck by how you talked about independence and really that ability to strategize. But are there other things that you've seen in your space from this work?
I think that we've seen a lot of, just the same as Jen, we've seen a lot of marketing opportunities, and our customers are really pleased that, you think Sawmill and you just think dirt and diesel and hydraulic fluid and mess and big carbon footprint. And I think we do still have some of that stuff, but our customers really, really appreciate that we're trying. And we're on Route 4 and people are seeing our solar panels too. So, yeah.
I think a lot of people don't see our solar panels because they're so high up, and you have to stand just at the right place in Central Square in front of the courthouse and look up to see them. So a lot of people don't even know we have them. But I was really struck by the comfort. This place is so comfortable in the winter. I come to work and I'm like, oh, I want to make my house this comfortable, but that's a whole nother project.
Just incredible. The perseverance that you all had in really seeing these projects through, and then just the inspiration of what you've been able to accomplish and what I imagine you have planned for the future, because none of you are staying comfortable in your current in your current investment. I know you're already planning for the future. Lydia talked about some of that. It's just incredible to see that really leading the way in New Hampshire as our small businesses do. I'm going to kick it back to Melissa. She's going to close us up for today. I really thank you all for being with us and to the panelists for sharing their experiences.
Awesome, Katie. Thank you so much. And again, thank you to our panelists for lending their expertise and their stories for this afternoon. Thank you so much to everyone who is able to join us and submit thoughtful questions, both on the technical aspects of these projects and how our small businesses were able to accomplish their goals, as well as some of the big picture questions that we'll all be looking to address as we look to accelerate our energy transition here in New Hampshire. I'd be remiss if I didn't say that New Hampshire Energy Week events are made possible through the generous donations of our sponsors. So many thanks to our premier sponsors, New Hampshire Saves, Coca-Cola Beverages of New England, and Eversource. And again, another special thanks to today's event sponsor, Rath Young and Pignatelli. We really appreciate you joining us. And we hope that you will take a moment to sign up and join us for some other Energy Week events that are taking place for the rest of the week. You'll see the URL is shared there. You can head right on over to sign up and register for some exciting discussions on EV. We have a career and resource fair happening on Thursday, and we'll be culminating Energy Week by awarding our energy champions here in New Hampshire. So thank you again for your time. And we'll be sharing a recording with you all shortly and hope you have a wonderful afternoon.